One of the first cartoons produced by one of the most successful television animation studios in history, it opened a new market and laid the foundation for a decade of dominance. Hard to say that it stole its concept from stories that came before, but it sure did borrow a lot. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of The Littles. The Littles is a 29-episode animated series that ran from September 1983 to November 1985, Saturdays on the ABC television network, based on a series of books called The Littles, written by John Lawrence Peterson, which were not based on a series of books called The Borrowers, written by Mary Norton, but they do have a lot in common. Within the walls of every home in the neighborhood, there are families of creatures no bigger than a mouse. They're just like regular people, but much smaller, with pointy ears and a tail. They're in your bedroom, the bathroom, and around the kitchen, sometimes helping out by doing small tasks that you don't even realize they're doing. Fix a wire here, drive away some mice there. But there is one boy who knows their secret, 12-year-old Henry Big and his pet turtle Slick. They've made friends with the little family that lives in their walls, Tom and Lucy, their parents Frank and Helen, Grandpa, and cousin Dinky. Good thing, because Dr. Hunter and his assistant Peterson suspect that the little people living in the walls are real, and he's developed the technology to prove it. If they can just get close enough to scan them, or better yet, trap them, who knows what they might do with them. An entire species of elf-like creatures hangs in the balance, and ground zero is Henry Big's bedroom. He's not big for a human, but he's the best chance for the survival of the Littles. Thank you to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description below to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. Working out is a great way to take care of your body, but getting truly healthy takes more than hitting the gym. It takes consistent annual checkups with your doctor, getting things checked out that feel off or not normal, a quality nutrition regimen, and taking care of your mental health. With more than 100,000 providers across every specialty, from primary care to dental health, eye care to urgent care to mental health and more, ZocDoc helps you see all your options in one place. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. You can search and filter based on what matters most to you to find someone who feels right for you. Insurance, location, availability, demographics, specialty, and more. It's hard to know where to start with all this stuff. Health insurance, finding a doctor, it can all be very confusing. It's way easier to just put it off until something actually happens, but by then, many times, it's too late. And in many cases, it's worse than it needed to be. The best time to find a doctor or a dentist or whatever you're in need of is right now. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/secretgalaxy to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/secretgalaxy. This message is sponsored by ZocDoc. Thank you again to ZocDoc. John Lawrence Peterson was born in 1924. He served as a paratrooper in World War II, graduated from the Pratt Institute in 1948, and worked in the advertising industry as an illustrator before writing his first books at nearly 40 years old in the early 1960s. Peterson's first works included The Secret Hideout in 1965 and its sequel, Enemies of the Secret Hideout in 1966. In 1967, he solidified a concept he'd been developing for over 4 years about little people with tails who lived in the walls of a house called The Littles. William and Wilma Little, their kids Tom and Lucy, live with their Uncle Pete and a handful of other extended family members in the walls of a house owned by the Big family. That's B-I-G-G. Yes, it's a bit on the nose, but these are books that were written for children. The Big family doesn't know about the Littles, nor the small favors they do to keep the house functioning. The Bigs are completely oblivious to the amount of money the Littles have saved them by performing regular maintenance on the pipes and wiring hidden in the walls. Peterson's The Littles book was very well received, and by 1973 there were 5 books in the Littles series, with more on the way. That was the same year that the NBC television network aired a made-for-TV movie called The Borrowers, about a family of little people living in the walls of a house unbeknownst to the big, B-I-G, people who lived there. See, in 1952, Mary Norton wrote a book called The Borrowers. It's about a family of little humans that live in the walls of your house. Before Peterson published his first Littles book in 1967, there were already 4 books in the Borrowers series. The main difference from the Littles is that the Borrowers don't have pointy ears or tails, which, to be fair, isn't something that Norton came up with. The Borrowers weren't the first to borrow. Tiny humans have a very long history in literature and even longer in mythology. Elves, fairies, gnomes, leprechauns, smurfs, they're all variations on the idea of humans,
but smaller.
Instead of being measured in feet, they're measured in inches, and they've occurred organically in stories all around the world for hundreds, if not thousands of years. The Borrowers and the Littles bring those ideas into the present. In 1967, Andy Hayward started working in the Hanna-Barbera warehouse, organizing mountains of animation cells from their extensive portfolio of animated productions. It wasn't long before Andy himself was working his way up the Hanna-Barbera chain of production. By 1980, he was a writer and story executive. He had a hand in pretty much all the cartoons Hanna-Barbera released at the time. During the summer of 1980, Hayward, who spoke French as well as English, met Jean Chalopin, the founder of Deke Audiovisual, a small animation studio based in Paris, France. Chalopin and Hayward became fast friends, and based on his work at Hanna-Barbera, Chalopin invited Hayward to join Deke, specifically to help create shows for the US market. Hayward accepted and made it official a year later in the summer of 1981. It was during the move to Paris that Hayward had the idea for Inspector Gadget. We'll come back to that. When Hayward joined Deke in France, they were already working on a new series called Ulysses 31, produced and written by Chalopin. For its production, and many that followed, Deke partnered with Japanese animation house Tokyo Movie Shinsha, or TMS.
We've got to tell the grown-ups that voting is important. That's what democracy's all about. It's our future.
Henry's doing great. He's got all the kids urging their parents to vote.
Oh, Lucy, the whole 5th grade has joined the campaign.
Let's get the whole country.
The whole country?
You're too young to vote, kids, but you're old enough to make a difference.
Tell your parents to register.
And vote!
Ulysses 31 aired one season of 26 episodes from October 1981 through April of 1982 in Japan and France. Upon its completion, Deke and TMS began production on a sequel to the popular long-running Japanese Lupin III franchise, based on a popular long-running French franchise. If completed, it would have been called Lupin VIII and would have featured the descendants of the original Lupin III characters. However, due to a rights issue with the main character Arsène Lupin, it was never completed or released. Hayward was tasked with taking on Deke's American expansion efforts directly from America. Instead of developing shows for the European market and trying to sell them in the US, Hayward's mission was to develop shows for the US market that could be sold internationally, which he began doing immediately by selling The Littles to the ABC network in the US. ABC was getting killed on Saturday mornings by NBC's tiny juggernaut, The Smurfs. Super Friends and The Fonz, two different shows, weren't getting the job done. Perhaps little elf-like creatures were the answer, because by 1982, Peterson was up to 9 books in the Littles series. In April of 1982, Hayward moved back to the US to establish the new US branch called Deke Enterprises in Burbank, California. Deke needed a hit show to recoup some lost revenue due to Lupin VIII. And it wasn't Deke's 1982 follow-up, The Mysterious Cities of Gold, which wasn't developed for the US market, though it did eventually air. Hayward began developing The Littles for network television and Inspector Gadget for syndication. As with any adaptation, there were differences between the Littles book series and the version produced by Deke. Some character names were changed, some relationships altered, many characters omitted altogether. The biggest changes were the fact that 12-year-old Henry Bigg knew and was friends with the Littles, as well as the addition of the new characters Dr. Hunter and his assistant actively hunting the Littles. ABC thought they had something unique with the Littles. For starters, it came with a built-in fan base thanks to the millions of books sold through Scholastic Publishing. On top of that, ABC believed their schedule not only maintained their competitive edge, but was infused with some enriching educational values that were even higher than those they were previously known for in the past. Squire Rushnell, ABC's vice president of long-range planning and children's television, said, quote, "The Littles is probably going to be the most openly educational series that has been on Saturday morning in a long time. The Littles is going to be one of the more significant TV shows that is talked about this year." Henry Bigg was played by Jimmy Keegan, Greg Berger as Frank Little, Patricia Paris as Helen, Alvy Moore as Grandpa Little. Tom and Lucy were played by Donovan Freeberg and Bettina Bush. Ken Sampson played Dr. Hunter, while Frank Welker made turtle noises as Slick in Season 1. He was replaced by Pat Fraley in Seasons 2 and 3. The Littles debuted just 5 days after the regular series premiere of Inspector Gadget. 13 episodes aired through December 1983. Both series continued Deke's partnership with Japanese animation studio TMS. Season 2 of The Littles kicked off in September 1984. 8 new episodes ran through October 1984 before The Littles took a huge step toward international fame and stardom at the movie theater. Here Come the Littles opened May 25th, 1985. It was technically a prequel to the events of the animated series. It shows Henry Big meeting the Littles for the first time and joining forces with them to stop his uncle from tearing down the house to build a shopping center. It was part of a growing trend of animated films based on existing cartoons kicked off by the Smurfs in 1983 with The Smurfs and the Magic Flute, a film that originally hit theaters in Belgium in 1975 but got released after the Smurfs took off on television and on retail shelves in the US in 1981. He-Man and She-Ra, the Care Bears, Rainbow Bright, and the Littles all went to the movies in the hopes that the kids who liked watching at home would follow. And as far as the Littles were concerned, they did. It made just over $6 million, and the reviews were generally positive, applauding movie makers who were addressing that age group given how little selection there was at the theaters for them. Movie critic Bill Cosford gave it 3 out of 4 stars and said it was nicely animated and occasionally quite rich in texture, concluding that it is, quote, recommended heartily for that audience that falls somewhat uneasily between the Care Bears and Porky's Revenge. Terry Lawson thought it could be the start of something big based on the reaction of his own kids. He speculated that it could generate a merchandising strategy that followed in the footsteps of franchises like Cabbage Patch Kids, Care Bears, and Transformers. Spoiler alert, it did not. Season 3 of The Littles began in September of 1985. It took the Littles out of their familiar surroundings into the bigger world, leaving Dr. Hunter behind to take on much larger adventures. A second film called Liberty and the Littles was produced, but ended up going direct to TV in October of 1986. According to writer Mark Scott Zachary, a change in management at DiC resulted in the film being chopped into 3 pieces and going direct to television. That change in management was a hostile takeover of DiC executed by Andy Hayward in cooperation with Bear Stearns and Prudential Insurance. It meant that founder Jean Chalopin was no longer a part of the business and that DiC was now heavily burdened with debt, and the Littles weren't part of that strategy going forward. Very little merchandise for the Littles made it to the shelves in the US. International markets got a lot more stuff. There were storybooks, a board game from Milton Bradley, paper goods like stickers and greeting cards, Halloween costumes, PVC figures, records, and more. If you missed it the first time around, a comprehensive DVD collection of The Littles was produced in 2007 and again a few years later in 2011. As of this video, it is officially available on various streaming services, or you can find some episodes here unofficially on YouTube. The Littles as a franchise didn't end with the cancellation of the cartoon. Peterson published 5 more books before his death in 2002. Additional books were published after his death, some of them written by his son Joel. The Borrowers, on the other hand, have flourished. A 1992 BBC TV series, a 1997 movie starring John Goodman, a 2010 animated film from Studio Ghibli called The Secret World of Arrietty, a 2011 BBC production starring Stephen Fry, Victoria Wood, and Christopher Eccleston. And most recently, in 2025, Blue Spirit, the studio behind Marvel's What If, Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai, Netflix's Blue-Eyed Samurai, and the continuation of Mysterious Cities of Gold, produced The Borrowers. Made in France, it's a CG animated series for 6 to 10-year-olds. Perhaps an indicator that the future may well hold space for another series about little people that live with humans. If The Borrowers can find success again, then perhaps the Littles aren't far behind. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. Please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy. Several different tiers to address your specific Secret Galaxy content needs. Check out the Secret Galaxy merch shop at secretgalaxy.shop. All merchandise is physically in stock and ready to ship. Links to all of this in the description down below. And let us know in the comments down below if you were or are a fan of the Littles. And furthermore, if you knew that the Littles and the Borrowers were 2 different franchises. I did. Not because I'm super smart or anything, just because I didn't realize the Borrowers was also about little people living in the walls of houses. I never saw the John Goodman movie, but was pretty sure I knew a movie called The Borrowers existed, and was pretty sure that it didn't have anything to do with the DiC cartoon. I certainly didn't know either franchise was based on a series of books because I never read either series of books. This is a long way to go to say that I knew there were 2 different things, but not because I know so much about them, but because I knew so Littles.
That was dumb.
Stupid.
Cut.